Okay, so this is Travis from Horror Movies Uncut and Submissions and Slashes, and I am honored to have Mr. James Suttles and Jennifer Trudrong, the director and writer behind a nice little insecty feeling monster film called The Nest. And, I always have to give you guys like kind of my thoughts about the movie right off the bat from watching it. And I am actually one of your like original, like, monster movies from the late 80s, early 90s, when, kind of monster movies were kind of disappearing because everybody wanted a hockey mask or zombies or something like that. So this was a very, very appealing film to watch because you guys actually brought a lot of dynamics from that kind of period to the table that you don't really see too much in films anymore. So I'm very, very curious first and foremost. And Jennifer, if you want to start off by answering this, since you're the writer behind everything, where did this original idea come from the movie? Was this something that you kind of based off of something else, or was this just like an original thought of an idea?
So my kids really like that everything I write is pretty much inspired by them.
Okay.
And
that's a great answer.
Yes, this is yet another example of that. My youngest daughter went through a bout of extreme separation anxiety, and just through dealing with it and trying to figure it out and like talking to different doctors about it, my horror brain, immediately it was like, what does this mean? Worst case scenario.
Right.
Kind of those hidden maternal fears. And so that was the genesis of what could have triggered this really extreme separation anxiety, and where could I take that?
Okay. And so James, for you, when a project like this is laid out in front of you, like what's kind of the first, thoughts in your head of how you would like to see this all kind of unfold? How did you take the project whenever it was first dropped in your plate?
So, it kind of goes back to what Jennifer said to a certain extent. I have 4 kids. And so when I read this script, it really connected with me with my youngest daughter.
Okay.
Because she hasn't struggled, I think, to the extent that some have, but she's had some separation anxiety here and there. It's very minor, but reading the script, I could totally see how I love the idea of the blending of the reality of the struggles, like, kid psychology issues going on versus the creature aspect. And so combining those two, I thought was just brilliant in the way that Jennifer had done that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a very prominent portion of the film that I think can be lost if people are focusing too much on the kind of monster sci-fi aspect to the film. There's a lot of family dynamic that's going on here. And I think in the generation that we live, when I'm a father, also I have a 12-year-old son, and I'm in the screen battle right now. So like trying to limit the time with the screen. I think it was great. Tell me a little bit about the teddy bears, because like without giving away any spoilers for the film, I think you guys did a great job of selecting items that really, really hit home for like young kids and something that they would be really connected to. It's almost like, I feel like if for some way you could have made a blanket be kind of the host of all of this, it would be the same thing. So where did the ideas kind of come from? Is this also from your kids, knowing that they are holding on to, Jennifer, if you want to speak to this, was there like a particular object that your daughter was super fond of and didn't want to let go? And James, like you can kind of piggyback on that if you can.
Yes, my cat is downstairs, like, of course, getting into everything. So
right, exactly. It's
maybe it's a cat, maybe it's creatures. But yes, I slept with a teddy bear for years, and my daughter Penny, she now sleeps with it, and I had it all through college. And yeah, so it's that for me was the idea of being attached to a comfort item beyond also with being attached to your parents.
Okay. What about you, James? What was there anything that you kind of saw visually as like, yeah, we got to make sure these items are also in place to make sure this film's successful?
Well, reading the script with the teddy bear, the idea of there being a creature inside of it and it having that movement that you see in the film, sort of that the belly movement is just just terrifying, right? And then
Right.
and
Well,
also,
the eyes of the bear alone are terrifying. Like that's what was freaking me out the whole time. I'm like, I don't even care about the thing inside. Look at the eyes on this thing.
well, that's funny because part of part of the thing that you run into with films and independent films in particular is you've got a teddy bear. We can't just take any teddy bear off the shelf. We've got to make sure it doesn't look like some trademarked item.
For sure.
So part of that was we found a teddy bear and we removed its eyes. And John Lauderbeck, who did our props and special effects, he found these giant eyes. And when he brought it in, I was like, this is amazing. It's like a mirror inside the soul of this bear. And we used that a couple of times in the film. But the other thing is too, like just imagining the grossness that it evolves into, and the fact that would become the item that Meg would be attached to and would still not let it go. There was something about that honestly feels true to life, because I think back of like stuffed animals that I had when I was a kid, and now I go back and find them 30 something years later.
Right.
They do look kind of nasty. I don't know what they went through.
Right. It's like, how did we grow up? So it's no surprise we're all like fans of horror movies and stuff like that. Seeing, you go back and look at like what are they called? The Cabbage Patch Kids and all those. Those are some freaky, like, I don't know if you guys remember those Munchie things. Like my cousins were like real big fans of those little monkey kind of, and those are some of the like scariest things in the world. So, but I feel like you guys really like hit it right on the head whenever you're doing that. James, tell me like what type of challenges, because we live in a very CGI world right now, and anytime you're getting with your guys and you're talking about special effects, and then Jennifer, I want you to kind of piggyback on this too. Tell me what kind of challenges you guys face right off the bat with your almost introduction, because one of the things that I think is missed in monster movies these days is something that you guys really capitalize on, which is the whole, you don't really get to see it until it's time to actually see it. You really kind of get an idea that there's clearly something that's going on with the bodies of this parasite whenever it's hosting it, but it's still not like a in your face, here's the monster in the very, very first like 5 minutes of the film, and now you have to follow it the whole entire time. Were there ever any thoughts of like, hey, we want to show this thing as much as possible, or was it more the instant direction of let's kind of keep what this is kind of a little secret so that you guys are just kind of building the tension more than anything?
I mean, it really came down to the idea of hiding it as long as you can. Because, I mean, I feel like that's always a much more successful way if you let the audience's imagination sort of develop and visualize for themselves whatever their greatest fear is. It's inside of the teddy bear. You see the teddy bear's stomach moving early on, right? So there's something there. But you're not sure what. And so I think, like I said, I think the audience's imagination could take them further and deeper and darker than we could. And second to that, the nature of what we do with independent film is we're always restricted by budget. And so budget comes into play. And so it's much easier not to show something.
Like, let's save it.
And that's, with visual effects, I mean, I always try to limit how many visual effects there are. I always lean toward practical in general. But this movie was difficult. And in fact, I mean, I think, Jennifer, we talked about that early on. Like, I was concerned about how do we pull this off because we don't have the budgets to be able to do some of the more extravagant CGI. And I think we found a really good balance.
For sure. And Jennifer, I think that's like a perfect like segue, because the thing that I was going to ask is when you're writing something like this, and then you get to the actual moment when you guys are starting to put it together, were there a lot of things that you had to kind of go back into with what you were writing to be like, yeah, the budget's just not going to allow for this to happen? Like, what kind of challenges did you face actually trying to bring the monster to life on screen?
When James told me he was interested in my screenplay, he pretty much gave it back and was like, all right, we got there's 2 timelines in the original screenplay. And he was like, okay, 1 timeline. And there was a lot of flashbacks. And he was like, no flashbacks. And so I think a lot of new writers, because that was my first feature screenplay, there's a lot of, flashbacks, a lot of like modern times, past times, 2 storylines. So I had to do a lot of revision and a lot of revising also for an independent film budget. And but when I was writing, you still have a big budget mind, especially when it comes to the creatures. So then it becomes like this amazing, your director and the crew and John Lauterbach, they're like, okay, how can we create this scene in the way that we can, to the best that we can within what we have available funds, visual effects like that. And the final scene was written a little bit different, and then we figured out that was just going to be too difficult to shoot. And I actually really love how it turned out. In my mind, I could see all of it, but when it comes down to it, like James says, there's a limit. But I learned so much, and I'm super proud of what this amazing cast and crew did.
That's awesome.
I'm in awe.
Yeah. Well, let's roll right into there talking about the crew. So anytime you have pretty much a young female as the lead kind of carrying the movie, like, I would figure it would be very hard as a child actor to really go through these levels that we see her go through in the film. And then when you add on what the mother is going through as kind of the one trying to keep everyone together within the course of the film, like, talk a little bit about how receptive, and James, you could piggyback on this, talk about how receptive they were to the challenges of the roles, because like I tell people all the time, one of the hardest things about making like a monster movie or supernatural film is that the characters really have to allow you to believe that this is going on within their realm, even if you're not seeing the actual, monster right then and there. So talk about the receptiveness of the cast and how you feel they kind of handled everything.
Well, I think going into it, the conversation I had with every cast member from Maple to Sarah and Kevin is that we weren't making a creature film. We were making family drama.
Yeah.
Dealing with this family that's being torn apart. So every scene and every conversation was really derived from that concept. And then the creatures and the supernatural aspect was something that we added on as sort of not an afterthought, but secondary to the motivations, right?
Okay.
And I think one of the things I'm most proud of in this movie is the performances. I think that I think the family is so strong and they work so well together. They feel real.
Yeah.
And I think that is what helps you actually buy the entire concept. I feel like if the performances weren't what they are, I think that the film would just not work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really was that. For my goal going into it was to make a film about a family that's just falling apart, and we're not sure by the end of it if they're going to hold together. If you take out the creature aspect of the movie, there's still a really solid drama there.
Yeah, for sure.
And that to me, I think, is something really unique.
Okay, awesome. Jennifer, what about you? How did you think the cast, like, of course, you already kind of gave them a lot of great praise on what they were doing, but what are some of the kind of things that stuck out to you that you really enjoyed about how they executed what was going on in the film?
I feel like the heart of this story, like James is saying, is really the mom. And Sarah, her performance, basically from her first audition, we were like, you're Beth, like this this is it. And then seeing them together and the chemistry together, and especially the chemistry between Maple and Sarah, and then Kevin, his shift with Jack, and so yeah, it was thrilling. It was thrilling. And then, like, Dee Wallace and Des Ryan coming in, just you as a writer, you get goosebumps when you
you're like, that's Dee Wallace doing my stuff. Yeah, that's something that it's whenever you see iconic people like Dee on film, you're always kind of curious to how that came to be. So how can you guys give me a little clue, or give us all a little clue? How did you guys get Dee involved into the project, and how was she throughout the whole course of it? Because women like her, they're just like, I feel like they can like lead the cast themselves, because they've been there. You know what I mean? They know all the ins and outs from the independent level up to the high level. So how did that come to be with Dee being involved in the project?
Jennifer, I don't remember. Did Dee's name come up before, or was it in the casting process? I can't remember.
I feel like to me, it was a surprise that she was even, a potential, because
I think, so I think because part of the process, every time we do one of these is like, okay, we start the casting process. We try to identify, which roles can we put a name into, and budget comes into play and all of that, right?
For sure.
But we went out and we started looking at, who's available that's affordable. And Dee's name came up, I think, from one of our casting associates that we deal with. And from that point, I called up Jennifer, I think, or text you or something and said, hey, what do you think of Dee? And I remember there was like a yes or something, like right away. You were like, perfect, right?
Yes.
For me, when Dee's name came up, it kind of connected back to something that I think you picked up on, which is it's a little bit of, I don't want to use the word nostalgia because I think that's a little bit of an overplayed word right now. But for me, it was that, in that it goes back to E.T. It goes back to those 80s era movies. And E.T. is a great example because it really is a family drama. It's
for
very
sure. Yep, 100%. Yep.
And so for me, that was sort of the aha moment of like, Dee Wallace is perfect for this film because she is iconic in the same type of films that is nostalgic, that I love as a child.
Totally agree. Yep, totally agree. Well, folks, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate both of your guys' time. I want to let you know right off the bat that The Nest is a film that I just think a lot of people are really going to enjoy because of everything that we talked about. And then the fact that it's creepy, man. It's just 100% creepy. I mean, like, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but after the very, very first scene of the yard sale and my man went in the house, I was like, oh, okay, I see what we got going on here now. This is a little bit more intense than I was giving it credit for. I'm always curious, director, writer, what is something that you guys would like people to take from seeing The Nest and hope that they kind of get after they watch the film?
Jennifer, you want to go first? I got to think on that one. That's a good one.
For me, horror, I love horror. I'm definitely a genre girl.
Yeah, for sure.
From day one. Well, maybe not from day one, but and the way
we need to talk to a psychologist about some things. Like, what's going on?
The way I connect with horror is through its heart. You have to connect with the character. You have to care a little bit, or else it has to be so bonkers that you're just like, woohoo, along for the ride. And so for me, for The Nest, I want people to connect to these characters and care about these characters and worry for them and feel the tension and the creepiness. And like, I kind of also want them to be devastated. And but yet, like, I just,
for sure.
I want them to take that journey, and I hope that's what they get from the film.
Awesome. James, what about you? Great answer.
I think for me, it's very similar, but maybe even a little more direct in the sense of, family and childhood innocence is precious. And so for me, like, looking at this movie, like, that's what it says is like, go back to the bare basics, and family and children, make them a priority, right? Because like I said, it's a film about a family falling apart, and if only they didn't fall apart, her life would be better, right? And childhood would be retained. And so I think that for me is what it's about. It's really a movie about family. It's what it is.
Well, I enjoyed it a lot, and I think to give you guys kind of a lasting impression, the minute I finished watching the film, I was in the shower and I started scratching and kind of, doing. So to me, that means job well done. You guys are definitely satisfied what happens when you watch a film of this caliber, because it does leave some after effects with you. And I think it is one of those types of films that when people are able to really invest in what's going on with the family, they'll totally get exactly what you guys are saying, because I agree 100%. It is really a family feel with a little bit of creepy side added to the mix too. So James, Jennifer, appreciate you guys both so much. Thank you so much for your time. The Nest was a lot of fun. I can't wait to see projects coming from both of you guys. And thank you. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Travis.
Thanks for having us.
You're very, very welcome. Okay, so I stopped recording here.